Hello, my name is Doug Lair. I'm an Associate Executive Director for the American Association for Respiratory Care, and I oversee the Meetings and Conventions Department of the association, of which we host two large meetings. I would assume most of you are familiar with the AARC Congress. Now, that is a meeting that attracts typically around 5 to 6,000 attendees and exhibitors. Obviously, you're not going to be hosting a meeting on that scale for your state meeting. However, we also host the AARC Summer Forum in mid-July. That attracts in the neighborhood of 350 to 400 people, which is applicable in size to your state affiliate meetings depending upon where you live. So let's talk about some of the factors that influence hotel selection. And in the hotel industry, it's all about rates, dates, and availability. First of all, what is it that is going to be most important for your state affiliate and your attendees? Typically, if they will be traveling from out of town and staying in a hotel in conjunction with your meeting, the most important thing for your group or your state affiliate is going to be sleeping room rates. So what is it that impacts sleeping room rates the most? First of all, are there other meetings in-house? Is it a high or peak season for the hotel? Are there a lot of leisure travelers there? You are going to get much better sleeping room rates when capacity is low or when you're the only meeting in-house as compared to the other way around. So those things are very important. Time of year is going to be important. We have many people typically up in the northeast part of the country, I'll use New York as an example, who beg the AARC to bring our summer forum to New York in the middle of July. It's a beautiful state. It's beautiful weather in July, but it's also the peak season for these hotels. And there's a reason why we travel to South Florida or the desert or the mountains, the Rocky Mountains, for this meeting. It's because they are held at times of the year, or our meeting is held at times of the year where their rates are typically at the lowest. It's what they call their value need dates. So think about that before you schedule your meeting. What is going to be the most economic time of the year for you to host your meeting? There is no secret as to why we host our summer forum in July and why we host our Congress in the fall. It's because that's when we can get the best rates. Also, think about days of the week. If you think about it, look at the AARC Congress, for example. Our meeting pattern is typically Saturday through Tuesday. Why is that? Because most business meetings and most corporate travelers are staying at hotels during the week. And so they want leisure business and they want other corporate business over the weekends because that's their low occupancy time of the week. So think about that during your next meeting. Do you want to host it on a Wednesday or a Thursday, or do you want to host your meeting on a Saturday or Sunday? And also for those who don't work at the bedside, like program educators or managers or others, it is easier for them to get time away from work without having to use vacation by hosting your meeting on the weekends. So that is something that will have a huge impact on your sleeping room rates, and that is something that the director of sales or the event manager at the hotel will be happy to discuss with you because they want to give you better rates because that is going to fill their value needs. And they'll direct you. They'll tell you what's going to be the best time of year to maximize the lowest sleeping room rate for you, and they'll tell you the best day of the week. So do your homework, and you can do it online, or like I said, they're happy to share that information with you if you discuss it with them in person. So, finding the hotel that best matches your meeting. Is the hotel suited for meetings? You have some hotels with wonderful sleeping rooms, but not enough too big or inadequate meeting space. You have hotels with great meeting space, but hotel sleeping rooms that are in desperate need of renovation. Or in an ideal world, you have a combination of the two. Great meeting space and great sleeping rooms. Number of sleeping rooms. Is the hotel large enough? Is it too large? Is it too small? So that's very, very important. When you think about your contract negotiations, you are going to have to commit to a sleeping room block. Now, keep in mind that not everybody who comes to your meeting is going to need a hotel stay, and not everybody who comes to your meeting who needs a hotel stay is going to stay at your hotel. They've got rewards points with other hotels. They can find it cheaper elsewhere, whatever the case may be. So be conservative when you commit to your sleeping room block. Have a good idea based on your meeting history, how many sleeping rooms you will likely need, and know that it is always better to go ask for more rooms as the meeting gets closer than to be stuck having to pay for rooms that don't get sold. Does the hotel offer self-parking? Very, very important for state affiliates. If you think about it for a moment, many people are coming in from out of the city, and sometimes out of the state, and so they are driving to your meeting. So free self-parking is going to be available. Valet parking at a premium is fine, but as long as there's a free parking service that's an amenity that's offered to hotel guests, I think that's something that you should look for. And if it's not part of your hotel package, that is certainly something that you could negotiate as an amenity into your contract. Does the hotel offer complimentary shuttle service to the airport? Well, that's something for you to determine whether or not it's important. How many people fly in from out of town? My assumption is for your meeting, not many. However, you will likely have to worry about out of town faculty who will be coming to your meeting and presenting. So think about that. And if there isn't complimentary shuttle service, how are you going to get them from the airport to the hotel? Are there restaurants in-house or restaurants within walking distance of the hotel? This is going to be really, really important. Number one, in our experiences, whether it's at Summer Forum or Congress, people typically stay close to the hotel on their first day of travel. They haven't kind of gotten their sea legs underneath them, for example. They haven't yet talked to the hotel concierge or the front desk. They aren't quite certain where to go, what are the hot spots in town, and so they're going to stay fairly close to the hotel. Finding a hotel with a restaurant will be very important for a couple of reasons. Think about it. People come to your meeting to network. So they need the convenience of eating and the convenience of a good networking spot. So try to find a hotel with either an in-house restaurant or one that's within walking distance. Is there enough meeting space and exhibit space? And you can find that information out by your space and capacity charts. Be aware, however, that the space and capacity charts and the information pamphlets that the hotel gives you are not likely, they are a bit deceiving, I will be honest with you. And the reason that I say that is that they give you capacities based on a room that is full to capacity without added extras like a buffet for lunch, like a area for a continental breakfast or a coffee break. They don't take into account for the projection screens, the projectors, the risers, the lecterns, all of that ancillary information that goes into a meeting is not accounted for. So typically what I do when I look at a space and capacity chart is I deduct about 20% from whatever they have, and that is indicative of the space that the room is going to be able to hold for my purposes. Room setups are not what they appear, and we'll talk about that and columns and supports and pillars on my next slide. So in this particular room setup, you will see in the middle to right section of the screen what looks to be a letter H with two boxes around it. That, in this room, is a column or support beam or a pillar. And these are typically most likely found in older hotels or in really, really, really large rooms. And in theory, that's not going to have a big impact. But when you look at the bigger picture, it does. So if the screen, the 10 by 10 screen, for example, that you are putting down in the lower left-hand corner of the room, what you will see with the two black bolted lines that fan out in opposite directions, everything inside that fan, all 37 seats will have an obstructed view of your screen. And obviously, that is not good for your attendees. It doesn't provide for a good experience and will likely have a lot of people coming to you complaining afterwards. So it's very important that when you are looking at your space diagrams to identify or not whether there is a column or a pillar in the room. And oftentimes those are labeled, but they're not going to be broadcasted to you unless the person at the hotel is asked. So make sure that you ask when you're considering that your meeting space to either see it in person with your own eyes, and if not, ask whether or not these rooms have pillars. What I would do if you have no choice and you have a meeting room that does have a pillar is would simply add a second screen into the lower right hand corner of the screen. And that way nobody in the room is going to have an obstructed view. They'll all be able to see the left screen or they'll all be able to see the right screen. But keep in mind that a second screen costs money. So trying to keep your costs down is not conducive in this type of setup. So those are types of things that you need to be aware of. Let's get into our win-win contract negotiation scenario. First and foremost, it's going to be important to determine your meeting wants versus your meeting needs. Are you in the business of providing education at an inexpensive fee and provide people with a good experience, or do you want to host your event at the most plush hotel in the city that's going to give people a very wonderful sleeping experience, but they'll be complaining the next day to you because you didn't take it to some less affordable hotel? I think we all know what the answer to that is. And then also understand what the hotel's objectives are. First and foremost, the hotel wants to make money. That's why they're in business. And so they are going to create contracts that are going to maximize their ability to make money. It's going to be your job to maximize the amount of money that you make as a state affiliate and how much money you ultimately are going to pay to the hotel. But also keep in mind that the hotel wants to give you a great experience. They don't want to be deceiving, and they want you to come back year after year after year. So it's going to be important for them to understand what your wants and what your needs are, and they want to give you a great product. So keep in mind that their first goal is to make money, but their second goal is to make you happy. So that's where the contract negotiation comes into play. So as we move forward here, we're going to talk about 4 primary bullet points. Number 1 will be sleeping rooms. Number 2 is audiovisual. 3 will be food and beverage. And then lastly, concessions, clauses, and amenities. When you think about sleeping room rates, that is likely going to be the most important thing for your group. It is for the AARC. We negotiate even for the last dollar with hotels, and sometimes they think we're crazy. But for members or attendees at your meeting, if you look at the average salary that they make, they're not going to be able to afford going to a hotel that is $225 a night plus tax. It's just simply not going to happen. They want room rates that are going to be commensurate with the quality of the hotel, but also that's affordable to their wallet. When you are negotiating sleeping room rates, there are a couple of things that you need to keep in mind. Number 1, and I've already said this, seasonality and days of the week are going to be very important. Simply ask your director of sales, what are the value dates that you have to offer me? And that will ultimately help bring your sleeping room rates down. Number 2, keep in mind that it is in the best interest of the hotel to keep their room rates as high as possible. Why? Because they compare their room rates with the room rates of other comparable hotels in the city or the area or the region, and then they are all compared to create a market standard price. So it is in their best interest to keep room rates as high as they are. Secondly, there is a 70 to 80% margin on every sleeping room that is booked in a hotel. So if you think about it, most of the costs are sunken expenses. They've already purchased the furniture. They've already purchased the decor. They've already built the room. What their real expenses are now are in utilities, electrical, heating, and cooling, the maid, the cleaning service, the linen or the laundry for their linens, and then replacing your shower amenities, your hotel shower gels and your conditioners and things of that nature. So they make a huge margin, and that's something that's very important for you to know, because going into it, knowing how much they are typically going to be pocketing for every sleeping room that's sold is going to be important for you. Also, one last thing as it relates to sleeping rooms is resort fees. I would tell you that to be mindful of that. Many hotels these days are mandating resort fees that will include amenities that your meeting attendees will not likely use or want. We have come across some such hotels in our negotiations, primarily for AARC Summer Forum. And typically, what we will do then, if it is a mandated stipulation that all guests pay resort fees, then we simply negotiate a room rate that is inclusive of the resort fees. We don't want people to think that they are going to a hotel being forced to pay for amenities that they don't want. If the hotel offers optional resort fees, completely different story. That is at the discretion of the hotel guest as to whether or not they want to spend that extra money. But keep in mind about resort fees. Audiovisual, one word of advice is that I would purchase your audiovisual equipment if you are able. My guess is that you could have a full payback on your AV equipment within 2 to 3 years or 2 to 3 meetings based on AV rental prices. So if you have somewhere to store the equipment, if you have the ability to insure it, if all the logistics for purchasing the equipment are there, I would recommend that you buy your own equipment. Food and beverage there will be likely a food and beverage minimum commitment that you will have to make to the hotel. And fortunately, though, is that when you make that commitment, it eliminates all meeting rental space fees that the hotel may charge. So if you cater your events, if you offer people a continental breakfast or a coffee break or some lunch or whatever the case might be, chances are that you are going to eliminate your meeting room expenses from a rental standpoint. Also note that there is a 30 to 40% margin on the food and beverage preparation. They have to buy the food, they have to make the food, then they have to recreate the food into an appealing presentation, and then they have to move the food from the kitchen to the dining room or to the ballroom. So it is not nearly the margin that the hotel has on sleeping rooms. Still a pretty healthy margin, but not quite what they have on sleeping rooms. One important thing to note, keep in mind that the AARC has also offered many times that we will spend a little bit more money on food and beverage if you can lower our room rate. And typically they turn that offer down because they would rather have the 70 to 80% margin that they would on the 30 to 40. One other thing before I move forward on the sleeping rooms, keep in mind that the hotel may offer the group a room rebate, meaning that we will give you $1 to $2 or maybe it's $5 for every sleeping room that you've booked. Now, I will tell you that that might look good for your books, but it is not something that will look good in the eyes of your meeting attendees. I will tell you in almost every single hotel negotiation that we enter into, we are offered a rebate of some sort, and we always decline it and just tell the hotel to simply pass the savings along to the hotel guest. And then finally, we will encounter concessions, clauses, and amenities that I think will be important for your state affiliate. So I say this because when you go into hotel negotiations, specifically with food and beverage, as well as audiovisual, the objects in the rearview mirror are not what they appear. So let's simply look. Remember on my 2 slides ago, I said buying your AV equipment might be more beneficial than renting it. Take a look here. How about a wired microphone? $50 per day, $175 for those who like the wireless lavaliers. A laser pointer you can buy at an office supply store for $25. They're giving them to you for $40 per day, and then you have to hand the laser pointer back to them. How about an LCD projector at $350 per day? But it's also important to realize that what does not appear are the eye-opening pricing, because what I've just shared for you are the retail prices. What I haven't shared with you is tax, and what I haven't shared with you is your service charge, which could be anywhere combined between an additional 25 and 30%. So here is what the real costs look like, or your out-of-pocket costs, once you look at that additional 25%. And in the industry, they call that plus service charge plus tax. So your wired mic now jumps to 63 and some change a day. Your wireless lavalier mic jumps to $222 per day. Your laser pointer, $50 per day. Same laser pointer you can buy for $25. And your LCD projector now jumps to $450 per day. So keep in mind that if you have the ability to buy AV, I highly encourage it. Food and beverage. And I almost titled this presentation the $5 can of Coke, but think again, it's really not the $5 can of Coke. Remember what we talked about, plus. From my general rule of thumb is when I see retail price, I just automatically add 30%. Here, these are typical published breakfast pricing. People do not think or understand how expensive food is to purchase, prepare, and buy, and have catered in a hotel. These are actually pretty average standard hotel costs for food. How about a continental breakfast for $39 out of pocket? So a couple of bagels, some fruit, and a glass of orange juice, maybe a cup of coffee, $39 per person. Please. Plate of breakfast, $43. Buffet breakfast, $56. And a gallon of coffee, this is the biggest sham in the industry if you ask me, $83 plus. So a gallon of coffee is $108. Are you serious? These are the things that you need to think about when you are providing food and beverage with your meeting, and how much money or how much value you're going to get for the money that you spend. How about lunch? A box lunch with soda, $56. Now the thing with box lunches, it is very labor intensive. You have to fold the boxes, you have to make the sandwiches, you have to wrap the sandwiches, pack the sandwiches, do the same with everything else. From a meetings and perspective, or a meetings industry perspective, this is average, folks. $56 out of pocket per person for a box lunch. A buffet, how about $64? How about beverages? A can of Coke, $5. But wait a second, folks, there is more. Plus takes it to $6.50. A glass of wine out the door, out of pocket, is $13. How about a beer, domestic, for $8 plus takes it to $10.50. So anything that you provide in regards to food and beverage is going to be very pricey. One thing that you might want to think about, instead of providing an open bar, providing a cash bar, or giving everybody one ticket for a complimentary beverage and then making them pay out of pocket for everything else. That helps keep your beverage spend down. Receptions, and this is the killer, folks. Keep in mind about this. Each hors d'oeuvre, and in this case I used a shrimp roll. Each individual shrimp roll, $9.10 each. I give you a story, and I kid you not, we were at a meeting, an AARC meeting. We were at a very exclusive, high-level VIP reception. I will not disclose which reception it was, nor will I disclose the individual who had 12 pieces of jumbo shrimp at $9 each. Think about what we just spent for that person to eat jumbo shrimp. Dinner, how about a plate of dinner? $95. Dessert, just a slice of pie, $23.40. So I think that I've put it into perspective for you that you need to be very selective when it comes to food and beverage, what you're going to provide to your attendees. So let's jump into hotel contracts. This is where I think it's going to be most meaningful for you. Beware. all hotel contracts are originally written to protect one party, and that's the hotel. It is your job to add language to protect your state society. So here are going to be some important clauses that I implore you to make certain are included in your hotel contract. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to briefly discuss what each clause means, and then I have given examples of some language that you may choose to have embedded into your hotel contract. So an attrition clause. What is an attrition clause? It basically means that if we book 100 room nights with the hotel, they do not expect you to sell all 100. They know that it's not an exact science in booking hotel rooms, especially for meetings and groups. But what they do say is that we're going to give you a cushion. That cushion is typically somewhere between 20 and 25%, maybe 30% on the high end. So we will give you upwards of a 30% cushion. So instead of having to sell 100 rooms, you would only have to sell 70 rooms. Now, I will tell you, 30% is almost unheard of. 20% is the maximum. So you would need, or typically the average, I'm sorry. So you would need to sell 80% of the rooms that you've booked before you would be faced with having to pay an attrition penalty to the hotel. And if you think about it, once they book the meeting with you, they are booking guaranteed revenue to their organization. So if you fail to live up to your portion of the hotel contract from a meeting room perspective, you will have to pay a penalty. So make sure that you have an attrition contract in your clause, which gives you a cushion, and I would start with a minimum of 20%. And the language that I've used here will show you that. And here's the attrition clause. And if you'd like to, by all means, go ahead and pause this presentation, and you can use this information for your contracts as well. Next is a cancellation. All hotels are going to have a cancellation clause in there, but I promise you that in almost every situation, it is going to be a one-way cancellation clause, only protecting the hotel. So the hotel is going to say, here is what you will pay us in penalties, typically based on a sliding scale as to when you cancel, should the group cancel with the hotel. I will tell you and give you an example that we have had as the AARC. We scheduled a summer forum meeting up in the mountains of the Rockies several years ago. And because business was slow, the hotel just decided that they were going to close the hotel. And so the hotel actually canceled on the AARC. So I would highly recommend that you have a cancellation clause in your contract that is two-way, that not only protects the hotel, but also protects the group, meaning you, and what the penalties are should one group cancel on the other. And here would be a cancellation clause. Okay, force majeure. Force majeure. I think of today is May 4th, 2015, and I think about the riots that just took place in Baltimore, Maryland. Force majeure protects your group in the event of riots, strikes, war, crime, act of God, tornadoes, hurricanes, anything that would force you to cancel your meeting based on acts that are out of your control. And you want to make sure that they are spelled out in the force majeure. So make sure that there is a force majeure. Most contracts that hotels give will provide protection for both the hotel and the group. If not, make sure that it's not one way, because they may try to slip that in on you. Make sure that the group is protected from a force majeure standpoint as well. And here is a force majeure language that you may want to consider. Indemnification. An indemnification clause basically is a clause that will protect the group, or, and what is most likely to happen, it is going to be a one-way indemnification clause to protect the hotel from them being sued for non-malicious or non-egregious reasons. So, for example, I use the picture here. It looks like maybe the floor had just been mopped and they put a sign out. That is the appropriate and logical thing to do. It's industry standard, right? You mop the floors are wet, the floors are slippery. You put a sign out to warn the hotel patrons of such. An indemnification would prevent you from suing the hotel so long as they did everything by protocol and they put the sign out. However, if you were to prove gross negligence, that they failed to put the sign out, that's a different story. So keep in mind that you are going to want to make sure that an indemnification clause is in the contract, but it protects both groups. So if, for example, somebody comes to your meeting and they're served an alcoholic beverage, and the trained bartender from the hotel failed to provide adequate responsibility, maybe served an underage person, and the person went out, got drunk, and killed somebody, you would not be able to sue the hotel, nor would the hotel guest, so long as the hotel did things appropriately. And the same can, I could give you examples both ways, but I think that you understand. So make sure that you have mutual indemnification clauses, and here is such a clause that you may want to consider. Rate protection and relocation. What is rate protection? If you are going to be a large group and house and you are going to be taking up a large number of meeting rooms or sleeping rooms, it would behoove your group to make sure that they are not going to be able to find rates cheaper by going to an Orbitz or an Expedia or a Kayak or some other type of third-party group. So you want to make sure that your group has protection from lower rates with other institutions or other third parties by making sure that your guests are not going to be able to go out and find better rates elsewhere. Relocation, very similar to the airline industry. What happens? Hotels overbook their hotels all the time. They overcommit their sleeping rooms because they know that there is an inherent cancellation on average per day, every day, and that they would rather relocate people, just as the airlines would rather offer credits towards future airline purchases. The same can be said with hotels. So when that happens, make sure that there is a proper protocol and process in place for when your hotel guests have to be relocated, and make sure that they're treated appropriately. Quiet enjoyment simply means that the hotel is not going to be running jackhammers during your meeting, that you have the right to quiet enjoyment while you're hosting your meeting. I will be honest with you that most of these situations do not take place with the hotel or with remodeling, but with other groups. I will give you an example that we were holding an AARC board meeting not too long ago when the hotel room, our meeting room that was adjoining to our space, were having auditions for American Idol. And it was getting pretty raucous and loud, and it was interrupting our meeting. So you want to make sure that you have a quiet enjoyment clause built into your contract. A non-compete clause. You don't want R.J. Reynolds, for example, to be coming in hosting an event right next to your meeting. Nor would you want, if you were the Michigan Society for Respiratory Care, you would not want the Ohio Society coming in and hosting their state meeting in the meeting room next to you. So adding a non-compete clause prevents the hotel from booking other business for industries that could be related to your field without going through you first and getting permission. A group room audit, we talked about a minimum meeting room commitment. Basically, what a group room audit is going to do is if you fail to hit your room pickup and you are faced with an attrition penalty, you have the ability to provide the hotel with a list of every person who attended your meeting, and they will cross-compare that with people who stayed at the hotel. So, for example, the people who actually booked a hotel room outside of your hotel block or outside of using your group code, they will be actually captured and credited towards your group. Construction and renovation. If there is major construction or renovation that's going on in the hotel that would negatively interfere with your meeting, you would have some restitution to pursue. Individual cancellations. What happens if a person commits to May 1st through May 3rd, but shows up and says, well, I'm only going to be here for the 1st and 2nd. I don't want to be here for the 3rd. What is the process that protects the individual and they have to cancel? Also, how far in advance do they need to cancel their entire reservation in order to forfeit any deposits that they may or may not have paid? Food and beverage, as I said, most hotels are going to require food and beverage spend. Typically, I will ask that their food and beverage prices do not increase by more than 2% annually from the date of the agreement. And you can see that there and what would happen if you fail to meet your minimum purchase. Alcoholic beverages. Some state societies will include alcohol with their events. I'm not here to judge one way or the other. The AARC provides alcohol at our functions. But it's good to know that the people distributing the alcohol at the convention center or at the hotel have received proper training. So once again, if there is some type of legal situation that comes about, you will have legal recourse, and the hotel will be provided stating that they have provided bartenders with adequate training for their particular purpose. Audiovisual, excuse me, checkout and the master account. Typically, we will ask that the audiovisual prices do not increase by more than a certain percent, and I actually usually use 2% across the board from the date that the contract was signed. What happens if a hotel guest checks out early? What kind of notification do they need to provide? How far in advance do they need to provide it? Are they responsible for a full night, a portion of the night? That type of thing. And then the master account. Obviously, there are going to be bills that will be expensed to the master account of the state society, and this clause just identifies and builds in timelines as to when it's expected that your bills will be paid. Nothing fancy there. Concessions. So what is it that you might be able to expect out of your participation in the meeting and by signing a contract above and beyond just the normal sleeping room rate and meeting space and food and beverage commitments? So first and foremost, oftentimes if you ask for, the hotel will offer you group rates. So for example, if you have your planning committee or your board of directors that you will be there and you're going to absorb the costs for, ask for a group rate. So your people, your volunteers who work for your society are going to get a discounted rate over what everybody else pays. And typically you might be able to get a room rate at 75% of the cost that everybody else would be. It's certainly okay to ask for complimentary suites for your executive director if you have one, or your state president. How about concierge access for your board members or your volunteers or your planning committee? Obviously, access to a concierge lounge where sometimes they offer complimentary snacks in the evening or drinks or a continental breakfast in the morning is certainly an appreciated amenity. A welcome amenity, perhaps a fruit basket or some soda or some kind of cocktail, maybe even just something as simple as some bottled water for your executive director or your president or your planning committee when they come in. That's something nice that you could throw in and doesn't cost the hotel a lot of money. Complimentary parking, I had talked about earlier. Earned room comps. So for your group, an earned room comp of 1 per 50 would typically mean that for every 50 sold sleeping rooms, that your group would get 1 complimentary room. So if you have people on your board or planning committee in which you are paying for their rooms, or even faculty, you could insist on a earned room comp of 1 per 40, which is really good, or 1 per 50, which is most likely, and you might be able to get some free sleeping rooms for your for your state society or your faculty. We always insist on complimentary in-room Wi-Fi, and in my experiences, hotels are pretty quick to give that up. That does not cost them any money. While there is revenue implications for them, it has minimal to any expense. So that's typically something that they're happy to give. Um, I ask for discounts on food and beverage and audiovisual, anywhere between 5 and 10%. I would start with 10%, but think that 5% is likely. And then last but not least, ask for no resort fees, and in worst case scenario, if you are mandated, negotiate those into the room rate. Last but not least, I will tell you that I typically ask for a post-convention or post-con report that identifies our entire spend with the hotel. How much did we pick up on sleeping rooms? How much did we pick up on food and beverage? How much did we spend in the bar? How much did we spend in a gift shop? How much did we spend with room service? How much money did we generate in the bar or your spa? And the reason that I ask that is because now, knowing what their margins are, knowing what your entire piece of business is, puts you in a better position to where you can negotiate your next meeting with them. And that is the other part of building relationships and going back to the same hotel year after year after year, is that it allows the hotel to build relationships with you. But by having this information, it also allows you to have more information on your own. And in many instances, the hotel might know more about your group than you do. And that's unfair when it comes to contract negotiations. So I ask for a post-con report so I know what our entire piece of business brought to the hotel. Last but not least, I always would recommend that you build a request for proposal or an RFP for your group. The more information that you can provide to the hotel and the size of your room block, your amount of food and beverage that you spend, what types of events do you have? Is it receptions? Is it meals? Is it meeting space? Is it coffee breaks? The room setups, all that information. The more they know about your group, the more they know about your mission, vision, and values and what's important to you, the more that they understand about your member or your attendee, the better off that they're going to be able to help create a win-win meeting for you. So I would encourage you to create a RFP. So anytime you go out to a new hotel for a new piece of business, you can give it to them. It's basically a portfolio of information that gives them from soup to nuts, from A to Z on your meeting, and allows them to really understand what it is that's important to you and what your needs are versus your wants. So with that, I would certainly encourage you to forward any questions you might have to me. I can be reached at Laher, Laher, at aarc.org, or you can call the main office at 972-243-2272, and I'd be happy to provide you with some examples or templates on RFPs so you can get started with yours. Or if you have any questions, contract negotiation questions, or anything of the like, please feel free to call me. That's why we're here. We are here to serve our membership and to serve our affiliates, and I'm happy to help in any way I can. So with that being said, good luck on your next meeting, and thank you for spending your last 45 minutes with me. I appreciate it. Bye-bye.